Okay, so this is going over document 30, the Association of the New York Sons of Liberty. Okay, so starting off, what is the source? Is that bold area? Yeah.
Isaiah Niles' Principles and Acts of the Revolution in America.
REV stands for revolution. And this is a collection of works during the American Revolution, so it's sort of like the 1800s versions of Voices of Freedoms. You can look at it like that. So in this instance, the source is really just relaying the information. It doesn't have much impact to the actual information. And for those who are watching the video, a lot of the sources may just be relaying the information. It may not be directly tied into the information, but there are some. For instance, like the Pennsylvania Gazette, that was one that's directly from that time. So if it's a source directly from the time, view it and look at its importance. If it's not from that time, it is mainly just relaying information. All right, who wrote this document?
I said the colonists, just because it said principal gentlemen of the city, maritime lawyers, and other inhabitants of all ranks.
That is who they're addressing it to.
Oh, great.
But you're in the right idea. It is colonists, but like what specific part of the colonists? Like what specific group, organization?
Sons of Liberty.
There you go. The Sons of Liberty. Do you guys know what the Sons of Liberty are?
Civil workers.
A group of merchants, yeah. It's a group of, like an organization. It's a grassroots organization. Do you guys know what grassroots stands for? So grassroots is sort of like something homegrown, so something that's from your region, so like it's not something from another country or another colony. So these are people that are in the, the British colonies that are fighting against and activating against British rule. So that's the idea of grassroots, right? So they're a grassroots activist organization that are going against the British rule. It's a collection, but they use force. So if you want to relate it to something in history, think of like the Black Panther Party. This is essentially the earlier version of that. They use violence and they use sort of like that message of violence to send to the British and be like, hey, we don't agree with you. Like, and you can associate to the Black Panther Party how they used violence, how Malcolm X thought violence was better than Martin Luther's peaceful protest, right? So that's a historical connection you can make between the two. Sons of Liberty, what? And by what, I mean the topic, right? So like, what is the main idea of this argument, or this document? Morgan?
Isn't it like how they don't want the Townsend's Acts to happen and then trying to like protest the Townsend's Acts?
I said the same exact thing, but not in your verbiage. So what I said is the fight for liberty, right? So it's exactly what you're saying, right? They're going against this opposition that was opposed against them. Or fight. Right, so this fight for liberty, as we saw in document 29, right? The main topic was just liberty in a sense, right? How did the acts affect day-to-day lives? This argument is now taking it a step further, and it's like, all right, what are we doing to protect that liberty? What are the actions that we are going to do? And those actions, well, you will see in the historical context part, but get through when and where first. All right, so when was it? 1773. All right, where was it?
New York.
Baltimore is where the source was for that. That's where like that author made the book. So that's for that part. New York is where the Sons of Liberty was at. Sons of Liberty had sort of an organization in every colony.
New York.
Exactly, it was that version of it, right? So New York. NY stands for New York. All right, historical context and sort of relaying back to the topic, that fight for liberty, the main thing, and it kind of mentions this in a little bit, in retaliation to the Tea Act, they had the Boston Tea Party, right? So Boston Tea Party, right? So the Boston Tea Party was a direct response to the Tea Act, and so it was like this, and it was done by the Sons of Liberty, right? That group in New England, yeah, New England, I think. Crystal, if you want to fact check me, I think it was New England. They were like, hey, because in this article we can see it's saying, if any,
Boston, Massachusetts.
yeah, so New England.
Yep, December 16, 1773.
1773, same exact time, it's a little later, right? So as we can see that, right, that fight, and in this it was like, if any tea from Britain comes to us, we're gonna retaliate. And we see that retaliation in the Boston Tea Party. We see that fight for liberty. We see that opposition to the monarchy. That idea of opposition to monarchy was an argument from Brutus, right? The document before document 29. So that's what you want to do, is also like all these things are connected, find that interconnectivity between documents.
2 days after the Boston Tea Party is when the paragraph with the term 1773 is.
So this is after the Boston Tea Party, is what you're saying.
2 days.
2 days after?
It's like 2 days, yeah.
Okay, well, still the same idea, right? Boston Tea Party, fight for liberty. It's their motive, it's their motto.
Yeah, it's just 2 days after.
Exactly, so same time period, right? It's, you can see the connectivity like I was talking about, and that's the main point. If you can connect major things to the topic, to what you're looking at, in what sense. You can also put taxation without representation. That was a lot of the main ideas we used for the other documents. You can also put American Revolution, right? This is the start to the American Revolution. We can start seeing that fight for liberty. And that's the idea of the American Revolution, right? They wanted their freedom, they wanted their liberty. And this is the early prerequisite to it. Okay, so Boston Tea Party, I'll put American Rev. AM stands for American, Rev stands for Revolution, taxation. Without rep. W/O stands for without, rep stands for representation. All right, audience. Who was this document talking to?
The people I said earlier.
What people? Because you just said people in general, make it more
I would
specific.
say more like high-ranking, or
Educated individuals.
yeah, like people that have the ability to trade and do transactions and
So merchants.
merchants. Yes.
Merchants. I like that answer. Yeah. What you can consider that as is sort of, again, the main theme that we've been going is sort of just colonists in general, people of the colonies. Merchants fall under that. This can kind of, like you're saying, have more specificity to merchants, right? But in general, in a whole, it's talking about liberties of everyone. They have a caveat for that.
It's talking to the gentlemen of the colonies.
Yeah, it's talking to people who own property, right? At this time, we mentioned.
It says principal gentlemen.
Exactly, right. So in Ingram's class, we talked a little bit about, hey, women really don't have a lot of rights yet. So like, who is really all these documents talking to? So when we talk about, and like when I refer to colonists, it's mainly those who have stake, who have property, who own, who have the merchants, right? Things like that. So colonists, in parentheses, property owners, and to your historical knowledge, you know property owners means wealthy white men, people who can own property, not the typical slaves, women, though they can in some specific instances as we saw, but mainly this is the majority he was talking to.
Washington.
Exactly. All right. Lens, what is sort of a categorical thing you can put this document under?
Social.
In what sense? In what sense? What sense is it social?
That's all I got for you.
I would say more economical, just because they're like fighting against the taxes, like all the different taxes.
What else?
I would say social, cause like when they talk about slavery, they say like the British are equating them to the worth of slaves, which in those times, well, in all times, it means nothing. Like, it means like little to no worth.
So, like, essentially what I'm getting you're saying is like sort of the hierarchy between colonists and the British, right? How one have a priority over the other, right? So because this tax is being sort of put only on the colonies and not the homestead, why are we being treated differently? Why are we being discriminated against? Why are the people of the motherland not being taxed like we are, right? So that idea, that social lens, and that's when you can have that sort of, that's when you look at it through that perspective. It's like, well, why is only the colonies being taxed? Why aren't British taxed? Or is British taxing the people in the, like the motherland, but the colonists may not know, right? So you look at it through a perspective, you ask questions, you try to deduce whether, hey, is there a relation, is there a hierarchy, is one being treated more beneficially than the other, not beneficial, more favorable, yeah, thank you. More favorable than the other, right? So it's like, look at that relationship. And for economics, you can do the same thing. Why are we being taxed? What is the importance of these taxes, right? Well, it's to recover from the 7 Years' War. British lost a lot of money. They need to tax somebody. They need to make revenue somehow. We're going to the source, the colonies, where we get a lot of our money. We're going to tax you more, right? So look at it through those lenses, and you can ask questions to further deduce. And then you can go into related to these things. Well, how did the Boston Tea Party affect economics? Well, it opposed the taxes, right? So British are still not getting their money. They're losing product. How does that affect the economy of sort of Europe? What's the impact? Because British is this big economical hub, right? So sort of that thing that's, I'm going more in depth and more analysis, but that's sort of something you can look at from this one document. How can you go further? And when you do your primary source module, you can do that. You can ask these different questions, look at different perspectives, how other things can relate to it. Though for the quiz, you don't really need to do that. The quiz more goes over the source, the who, the what, things like that. This is more for your own analysis skills. Okay, argument. Why was this document written? Or what was the message of this document? I think that's a better way to put it. You feel like saying something more? No?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
They weren't happy with being taxed.
So the idea of taxation without representation, that I would say that is evidence, like what happened in the last document with what Brianna said, evidence to the actual argument or evidence to the topic, right? That fight for liberty. We're fighting for liberty because we're being taxed. We're being taxed without that representation, right? That's more of the evidence side of it, more contextual side. For the argument, I put, this is more of like a larger statement, so I put, we will be prepared to fight for our freedom, and if you stand for British rule, you are an enemy, right? Think of it more as like a manifesto. So I'm gonna put manifesto.
Just like at the end here, it has like 5 like.
Exactly, like the
points or
rules and
whatever.
stuff. Yeah, like
It says like anybody that like stands with the British or whatever, like for the taxes is like an enemy.
exactly. That is their argument, saying like we're fighting back. So these are our sort of like standards. You go against them, you're an enemy.
Can you read it again, what you had?
I said, basically, when I put this argument, I'm thinking I'm a son of liberty in this instance, so I'm using that first person sort of identity. So I said, we will be prepared to fight for our freedom, and if you stand for British rule, you are our enemy, right? So that manifesto, so like for the actual argument part, manifesto? Yeah, manifesto. This is actually, I'm just going to be right here. right? So we have that sort of like declaration manifesto to oppose the British rule, right? We're no longer going to stand for what you're putting us through. We're going to fight for our liberty. Addressing back to that topic. Context, the Tea Party. This is how we're fighting. This is what we're doing. It leads to the American Revolution. It has the basis of this idea of taxation without representation, right? This is how we're going to oppose it, and this is what we're going to do to oppose it. That's sort of the idea of this argument, right? So it's, when you think of it, in some instances you will have an actual argument in the terms of like the author stating something clear that he is going against, right? And others, be a little creative. That's why I did for this one, sort of like I'm thinking of myself as I'm part of the Sons of Liberty. What would I say this document is about, right? That's why we have this manifesto. That's why it's like, this is our declaration to it. You can be creative with it in whatever sense, but make sure you have the general understanding. And also, a good rule to have is like your argument's gonna go more in depth on your topic. It's gonna evaluate your topic more. So you're gonna be like, all right, what's my topic? We're fighting for liberty. How do we fight for liberty? We're opposing the British, right? They're the ones restricting our liberty. That's how we do it. And then you can also apply the lenses to it as well, right? And you'd be like, we're opposing British rule because of the taxes, economical. We're opposing it because there's a hierarchy, we believe, because people in the homestead are getting treated better than us. We're being treated, as Brianna mentioned, the article reference, we're being treated like we were slaves. And at the time, slaves were known to be sort of discriminated against and treated very poorly. And that's something to be, like, you want to stay away from. Well, that's how they were feeling in this instance. So just having that interconnectivity between every point is key. There's not one point that just stands alone. You can always find a way to connect the dots. And connecting the dots is your job as a historian, right? It is what your purpose is. You're finding ways to bring everything together, to have a clear understanding of what this time is about, what is going on, what's the big picture, what can we say helps, what can we say goes against, what things like that. So yeah, I think we are done with sort of the outline version. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask about the document itself, anything about the process. No? Good. Alright, so I'm going to end the video.
Bye.